often we have the contradiction between the way we feel and what we believe to be true about life. Right? So, so what we are constantly looking to do is to make sure that what we believe about life is actually the way in which we feel about it, which is an inside job. It's not an outside job. It's not based on what's going on out there in our lives, in the world, with other people. It's entirely an inside job. And so that is our theme for the month of January. It's actually our theme for the entire year, living from the inside out. Living from the inside out is the positive, practical spirituality that we teach here at CSLDallas. And that's whether we are seeking to manifest something amazing, whether we are working with our relationships, whether we are moving toward greater health and wholeness, or whether we are seeking a deeper experience of oneness and our spiritual awareness. Always, it's an inside job. And it's always about living from our truths and who we know ourselves to be and what we know about life, and allowing that to be the way in which we operate in the world. And then we teach all kinds of tools and techniques and ways of engaging with that in our classes as well as in Sunday mornings. So it's one of the reasons why CSLDallas has this massive, massive commitment to education. And I say it over and over and over again, you should be at a minimum of one class a year, if not two, because it keeps us constantly dripping what we believe into our embodied, felt, lived experience, which is actually where then it operates from this inside place. So we're going to be continually tapping into this theme all year. And we're going to be working with it all month here in January by really exploring the basics of this thing that we call the science of mind. Now, I like to call it the science of consciousness because I think that when Ernest Holmes was writing this in the early 1900s as part of the expansion of the New Thought movement, that mind was the word that they had. Psychology had just broken into actual practice with Freud and Jung and all of those people. And the revelation that we have a conscious and a subconscious mind was huge and helped explain some of the work that the mystics have been doing and that we get all the way from the mystery schools through the teachings of Jesus and Plato and on into what we do today. And so mind was the word they had at the time. But I believe over and over and over again, as I explore this and have gone deeper and deeper and deeper into this, I believe that what Ernest Holmes, the word he would use today, if that book was being written today, is actually the science of consciousness. It's way beyond our brain. It's way beyond our left brain. It's way beyond a cerebral engagement with life. It's way beyond just purely rationality, all of which gets associated with this word mind. And so it's really about the science of consciousness, this idea that consciousness is the fabric of life itself. And that we can explore it, we can study it, we can learn about the laws and principles of life, and we can use them and apply them to our lives. Actually, the truth is, we're always already living these principles. What we do in this work is to make it conscious, so that we're not automatically or unconsciously creating our lives and participating in this process, but actually co-creating from an awakened state to the best of our ability. Except for when we go back to sleep. Then we have to wake up again. Then we go back to sleep. Then we have to wake up again, right? All those times we go unconscious, on autopilot. Everything that we do is to support the awakening, and to support the application as we continue to understand. So this Sunday and next Sunday, we're going to be talking about the principles and practices that are fundamental to the science of consciousness as we study it and as we apply it in our own lives. So we're going to be talking about 10 universal principles and 8 specific practices that help us live the principles, right? Because otherwise, it's like that corporate thing that you have on the wall that everybody looks at and goes, yeah, that's nice, and then goes on and does however they want to do it. So principles are only as valuable as they are lived. And that's what our practices are for. And we have many methods that we teach that are ways in which to really dive into practicing our principles. All of this is fundamental to our practice of the science of mind, this science of consciousness. And CSLDallas, as I said, has a massive commitment to the education program because it's in the weekly reading, studying, talking, applying over and over and over again over a period of time that actually begins to drip this into our experience of life, to a felt, embodied, lived experience. And ultimately, that's what we want, right? We want to be able to walk around from our truths. That's what it means, living from the inside out. And notice that it's from the inside out, not from an intellectual understanding, although that is where many of us start. We start with an intellectual understanding, and we begin to apply it, we begin to practice it, we begin to struggle with, wait, how does that work? What does that mean? Over and over and over again. And each time we're deepening it and deepening it and deepening it and deepening it into our consciousness. And we're literally rewriting the synaptic pathways in our brain, literally creating a different understanding, a new understanding of reality, which in my experience and the experience of many people, those of you who've been around for a while, you know it utterly changes everything. And it gives us an entirely different place to stand within ourselves and from which to move. So we're going to be exploring these principles and practices. So the first question is, what is a principle? Well, it is not the place you are sent to when you are bad, right? Nor is it necessarily something that's come up with by a group of people who decide, well, this is the way it is. No, a principle is actually, I can read it easier more here. There's 3 definitions of a principle. It's a moral rule or belief that helps you know what is right and wrong and that influences your actions. It is also a basic truth or theory, an idea that forms the basis of something, right? And so this is where we get the principles of the scientific laws, the principles of gravity and aerodynamics and thermodynamics and all the principles that they're discovering now in quantum physics, right? It is the basic truth or theory or the idea that forms the basis of something, and it is a law or fact of nature that explains how something works or why something works. And so these are the fundamental dictionary definitions of what is a principle. So Centers for Spiritual Living has taken these and really tried to say, okay, what does it mean when we say it's a universal principle? So universal principle, these principles are fundamental truths or a proposition that serves as the foundation of a system of belief or behavior or a chain of reasoning. A fundamental truth or proposition, right? It could be something that we just hypothesize, and that's what the scientific method is, right? We hypothesize it, and then we start experimenting with it, as we are to experiment with it in our own lives, so that we prove to ourselves that it either works or it doesn't. It either works this way or it doesn't work this way. So even if we're not certain as to whether it's the truth or not, we can use a principle as a hypothesis to propose that maybe our life would work better if we pretended that this principle were true and acted on as if it were so. And then this becomes the foundation for our system of belief. It becomes the foundation of our behaviors, right? Living from the inside out, living from the principle. And it helps us when our brains want to spin out on all those things, all those false beliefs that it wants to spin out on, and we can use it to reason ourselves back to the truth, the spiritual truth that we actually want to live from. So the principles of science of mind, we are going to be talking about 10 of them today and next week. They articulate the basic ideas and theory of this philosophy of the science of consciousness. They help us understand the nature of reality. And they're grouped together, and the nature of reality includes the infinite presence and universal laws, right? The intangible, transcendent reality. It includes the nature of creation and our place in it, the created universe, the 13.8 billion or million trillion years of the created universe. And who we are as self-conscious beings, awakening beings, spiritual beings having a human experience, who we are in the scheme of this nature of reality. So when we are studying these principles, we're studying these three aspects of this infinite reality that includes both the tangible and intangible wholeness. However, principles are more than just intellectual ideas. Do not be fooled. Do not think this is just an intellectual exercise. No, no, no. They form the foundation for the way we engage and co-create in our lives. We're already operating on principles that we believe, that we believe in, right? The principle of the person with the most toys at the end wins. That's a principle that people are living out of, even if they don't say it. Life's a bitch and then you die. That's a whole nother principle, right? And there are people who live from that principle, not necessarily giving it language, but principles form these fundamental, foundational ideas that we have about how life works. And it does, in fact, inform us. And if we are unconscious to the principles that we are operating upon, then we are unconscious of the effect that they are having in our lives. What we do is try to wake up to all of that, make it conscious to us. Now, we have practices. We have practices that help us move these principles from ideas into a felt, lived, and embodied experience. So CSL defines a practice as the actual application or use of an idea or belief, as opposed to theories relating to it. Now, we don't use the word practice as in practice makes perfect. At some point, you're going to stop practicing it. No, we use the word practice the way we talk about a doctor practicing medicine or a lawyer practicing law. Do you see the difference? Right? You don't just go practice so that you get perfect and then you don't ever have to do it again, because if you talk to anybody who's been around for a long period of time, you know, and maybe you've experienced it yourself, that when you stop coming, you stop listening, and you stop taking classes, it's easy to drift off, right? And all of a sudden, there you are 3-4 years later going, what happened to my life? Wait, it was working so great. What happened is we stopped practicing. Not practicing to become perfect, but as I said, like you practice, the doctor practices medicine. It's every day applying the principles in our lives in a tangible way that allows us to use these ideas and beliefs and practice the theory or the principles. So the practices that we apply here to these principles, they teach us how to and provide means to apply the principles. Each practice includes methods for practicing and applying principles, and each practice may help us apply any or all of the principles. So the practices and principles are not like one-to-one related. Practices can be applied in lots of different principles to help us embody, right? The goal is embodiment. That's the goal. Over and over and over again. That's what living from the inside out means. We have embodied a view, a perspective of life, a set of principles, beliefs, and we have practiced it enough that that is our go-to place, or as I like to call it, our come-from place as we are wandering around in the world. And we have lots and lots and lots of methods that we teach. We teach some very specific methods through our education program, and as well as through our Sunday celebrations, the Science of Mind class. We teach lots of different methods, which are systematic procedures, techniques, or modes of applying these practice principles, right? So you'll hear me talk about some of them today. These are skills. Basically, methods are skills that allow you to practice principles. So everything from learning to contemplate, to doing meditation, to becoming self-aware, to listening to self-talk, all kinds of methodology. And lots of methodology that we don't teach that you find in other religions or other psychological practices or other esoteric practices, all of which, or other physical practices, all of which are also helpful in practicing the principles. But we can't teach everything, so we've kind of honed it in on a few things that we think really have a big impact on practicing the principles. Not meant in any way, shape, or form to be limited or limiting, but to give us a place to start and a place to stand and a thing to go back to over and over and over again when we forget. Like this morning, I put on some fabulous music because I was feeling a little, whatever, not so great, sad, a little overwhelmed, blah, 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 having my moment. And I put on Gary Lynn Floyd, and I listened to about an hour of positive music, and I thought, I'm ready for the day. It's great, right? That's a method. Singing beautiful music, listening, singing to beautiful, music. There's lots of methods that we talk about that allow us to practice the principles. Am I talking fast enough so we get this all in? Ooh, man. Come to classes. Come to classes. February, I'm starting Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. And then we have another class called Universal Spiritual Principles and Practices. We dive into these things in these courses. That's why it's so important. Okay. Our very first three principles is a set of principles that seeks to describe the nature of reality as a whole, the thing itself. There are tons of words that we can use to talk about the thing itself. Basically, what we're talking about is everything and nothing and all of it and the oneness as a whole in three principles. Yeah, right. Okay. So here's something that's really, I think, I don't know, I had this revelation while I was working on this talk over the last few days, and I thought, oh my God, I've never thought about that before. So these principles are not prescriptions. They are descriptions, which I think is a fundamental recognition of why I think the science of mind and the science of consciousness is so extraordinary. It doesn't tell you what you should do. That's a prescription. A description is, here's what's happening. What do you want to do about it? It's a very different thing, right? So you don't have to live up to somebody else's saying, here's what you should do. The power is all in our hands. Here's a description, a map of reality. May not be the only one. It's a particular map of reality that seems to work for some of us. It's a particular description of reality that is trying to get underneath cultural context. It's trying to get out of religious language and boxes, and it's trying to illuminate the golden thread that is shared by spirituality, philosophy, psychology, and science. And to pull that most fundamental thing out and see if we can describe it without the trappings that we've grown up with or inherited. And then, it's called a science, because it's a hypothesis that we then seek to experiment with in our own lives, to practice, and to prove to ourselves. So the thing itself, these first three principles speak about the thing itself. So the very first principle is oneness. There is one infinite reality. It's all a part of one whole experience. Nothing outside of it. We call it many names, including but not limited to God, life, universal spirit, infinite intelligence, first cause, or the thing itself. The one infinite reality is undivided, complete, and whole within itself. The oneness creates everything out of itself, right? If there's only one thing, and it's everything and nothing, it's the tangible and the intangible, it's the whole kit and caboodle, it has only itself to make stuff out of. And therefore includes both the absolute and relative, tangible and intangible, physical and metaphysical aspects of reality. I had to go away and I had to meditate on oneness and infinity for a year before any of that made sense to me. Because our brain, our egoic psychic structure is designed to catalog, separate, and describe in discrete elements so that we can decide whether it's a threat or not. That's how our brains are designed, and that's what our language does. And so we are, to really grab hold of this is to really to begin to invite ourselves to do the work to have the mystical experience of conscious connection with the one. And we begin to touch that oneness. We may never actually be able to describe it. And that's what the mystics have done for ages, is to cloak that experience of oneness into whatever their particular language might be, whether it's from the Eastern traditions, the indigenous traditions, the goddess traditions, the Western traditions, all trying to do the same thing. Describe this oneness. And of course, as the Buddhists teach us, right, any description is the finger pointing at the moon. Look at the moon. Don't become obsessed with the finger. But the finger does tell you what direction to look. And so it's useful. So this idea that it's all somehow this one expressing and experiencing itself. And so what I would add to this little definition of oneness is it is both being and becoming. It is both being in its absolute reality. It's also becoming through the evolution and the developmental processes of the physical universe, up to and including us. So everything is part of it. And I also love what Ernest Holmes says, that doesn't mean every experience is impelled by the oneness, right? Some of it is by our faulty thinking. However, it's all taking place within the oneness. All right, so there's one infinite reality. The second principle is love. Not love as romantic love, not Hallmark love, not Christmas movie love, not any of that kind of stuff. Not parent-child love, not human love. But what we would call agape, unconditional love, the unconditional giving of itself. Love is the self-givingness of universal spirit through its desire to express itself in terms of creation. Love is the impulse, and law is the way of creation. So when we say love, what we mean is that there is a trajectory for life, which is for life. Can't get any more basic and truthful than that. Life is always for life, and everything that is needed for life is constantly being given. That is our definition of love at the description of the nature of reality. So that when we have that mystical experience and we experience our oneness. Yeah, I talked about this morning in the Science of Mind class. Usually what happens for me is an upwelling of this unfettered, unbounded experience of gratitude. Because I know in that moment everything is present. because it's all one. And so therefore everything that has ever been needed has already been given. Every moment of wisdom, every sense of connection, every need is met. Everything is already there, and all I'm doing now is I'm beginning to unfold it, right? That's what is meant by love. Nothing is withheld. And here's the thing, you don't have to earn it. You don't have to earn it, and you can't get outside of it, and it cannot be withdrawn. So it's not like parental love. It's not like love of your ex. It's not like, right, all of that human expression of love that so often comes and goes or is transactional or all of those other things, right? We're talking about the impulse of life itself. You don't have to earn it. You cannot get outside of it, and it cannot be withdrawn. I think in the Christian tradition, maybe they call that grace, right? Grace. We call it love. This outpouring from the infinite. And of course, it is what we do when we love deeply. We pour ourselves into work that we love, into our children that we love, into our relationships that we love, right? Not dissimilar. It's not about being loved. It's about being love. The third principle of this thing itself is creation. This physical manifest universe from the Big Bang on into infinity and the however many universes, however many galaxies that they're now describing, all the multiverses that also, have form, anything that has form, whether it's a light body or a rock. Creation. The physical universe is the manifest body of the one infinite reality, and the one infinite reality is more than the physical universe, right? It is that intangible realm of the absolute, but it is expressed through form, whatever form that is. And the minute you have form, you have physicality, right? Because you have a dot, and then you have a line, and then you have a box, and then you have a cube, and then you have time, right? That is the description of the space-time continuum. Form and duration. And so the moment you have form and duration, whether it's in this universe or any other universe that has physicality to it, it is an expression of this one infinite reality. And it is inherently good, and is ever evolving toward greater expression of good. Now, this does not mean good as in a moral judgment or an ethical judgment, right? It is good because it is always life looking to express more life. That's the good. It's a very Aristotelian use of the word good, right? That the good is that which draws us forward. The good that we seek is that which fulfills us, which allows us to express who we are. And it is a recognition that that's what is motivating this love expression. For me, the shorthand that I use that really means something to me may mean nothing to you, but that really works for me is life is always for life. Always. Even if in the species of life, right? The example is that a salmon lays 500,000 eggs, and the first, 100,000 are eaten by the frogs, and the rest of them become little tiny fingerlings, and then 100,000 of those are eaten by the herons and the other fish, and then then the rest of them, they make it down into the estuaries, into the fresh water. Another 100,000 are eaten, and they're food, and they're keeping life alive, right? It's all life for life, and then 200,000 make it out into the ocean, and 100,000 are eaten right off the bat by the seals and the whales and the orcas and they feed, and maybe 100,000 make it back to the estuary, and again, they're food, and then half of them basically make it up to the stream, and then they have to go through the fish ladders and all the pollution that we've done, and everybody else has died, but all that's required is for 2 salmon to make it, one to lay eggs and one to inseminate it, and life is always for life. Do you see? The whole thing is for life. Now, of course, we will get to it later, how much we can interfere with that. because we become unaligned to these truths, which is the whole reason why we talk about alignment and congruence and allowing these truths to be embodied so that we live in alignment with them. And of course, we add something really important, which is individuation. And we will get to that when we talk about who we are in the scheme of things. So this is the manifest body of the one infinite reality expressing itself. So it's constantly changing, right? The absolute principles of love and the oneness are never changing, but creation is forever changing, always in the direction of more life, of growth and evolution and development. And when one thing stops evolving and has come to the end, another branch grows. Whatever it is, life is always for life. And we can trust that, right? And when we lean into these principles, this is the point, is to lean into these principles. When we find ourselves frustrated, challenged, having a difficult time, uncertain as to how to move forward, right? The point is to lean into these principles. And then we're like, oh, wait, it's not just fixing it out here. It's not manipulating something. It's not trying to control somebody. It's not trying to make something happen. It's remembering the truth, living from the inside, living from these principles and aligning ourselves with it. All the practices are teaching us how to do that. The most fundamental practice, we have one fundamental practice that is specifically tied to this principle, although it is, like I said, principles can help us apply practices can help us apply any of the principles. There's one particular principle that is critical to the deepening experience of these principles, and that is the practicing the presence. Practicing the presence is the practice of the principles of oneness, love, and creation, which means to become aware of and experience the one infinite reality. Not just think about it, although that's where we start, not to intellectualize it, although for many of us that's where we start, but to become aware of and experience the one infinite reality. Now, the practice of the presence is engaging in formal, definite, disciplined methodologies that quiet the mind and body and open awareness, right? Because if we're out here running around in the world, it's often a little harder to become aware of and experience this overarching oneness, this being that is becoming. And so we have these discipline methodologies, and beyond these formal methodologies is living in alignment with our science of consciousness principles, leaning into them in the moment. Oh, wait, oh my God, it's not working, wait, oh, it does, oh, wait. Life is always for life. Oh, life is always for life. Okay, well, this isn't working, but life is always for life. So let me back up a little bit and see, well, if this isn't working, there must be another path. Do you see? That's what it means to live from the inside out, not to just keep beating on it or say, well, I'm just going to go over here and do something else. Living in alignment with our science of consciousness principles, making these principles evident in the way we engage in the present moment, thereby being congruent in thought, word, and behavior. All right? That's what's called alignment, congruent, so that we don't just, I was raised Roman Catholic. 6 days of the week at my house, when I was a kid, you couldn't tell. We never talked about it. We didn't talk about God. We didn't do anything that looked even remotely religious or spiritual, but we sure as heck went on Sunday morning to Mass. I went to many years of catechism, and that was it, right? Didn't seem to have any impact on the rest of our lives. That's not what we're doing. It's not just being able to regurgitate nice principles, right? It is practicing them to be congruent in thought, word, and behavior. So this practicing the presence, and I think I've said this before, this is not only conceiving the idea of oneness, but practicing perceiving it in life. Can I see it, sense it, feel it? That what's going on around me and what's happening in you and the beautiful nature and the child and the expression and this business and this creativity, this too is part of the oneness. Can I see, right? And so we hear it when we hear about it, sermons in stones. When you sit and you look at the ocean and you experience vastness, do you see in that moment you are practicing the presence? Right. When you see a sunset and you want to applaud and go, yay, God, right? Because it's so beautiful. You are practicing the presence. When you look into your beloved's eyes or the eyes of a child and you see that sparkle and you see in your beloved behind the pain, you see who they really are. You are practicing the presence. Do you see? You are allowing the oneness and the love as it is expressed in creation to presence itself to you, and you are paying attention. This is one of our most significant and fundamental practices. Is it easy? Oh, no. It's much easier to blame them. Make them wrong, Say, oh, it's them or it's that or it's whatever it is. Oh, much easier to do that. Which causes us to be out of alignment with what we say, that we live a positive, practical spirituality that connects us all and has us be all part of one family, and it's all based on love and blah, 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 except for you people. Right? No, you're not included. Practicing the presence. Okay, we do have specific methods that we teach to help us learn how to practice the presence, besides the informal practices of it day in and day out. Am I aware of the sermon in the stones? Am I aware of the love that is radiating from another person, or that is, quite frankly, tied up in knots, coming out inappropriately, but I still see that that's life trying to be for life. But it's gotten twisted because of somebody's childhood or their experiences or whatever, right? We can see through to the truth. We also have these methods that we specifically teach here at CSLDallas in the science of mind and consciousness. It's the methods of meditation, mindfulness, and visioning. These are all ways in which we tap into the experience, the awareness of and the experience of the presence. Do you see? That's how we practice the principle. And so we use meditation. We have it on Wednesday nights. We have it now on Sunday nights, online only. We talk about being mindful, being self-aware, and we practice visioning. And as Joe talked about in the announcements, Carol has her visioning class coming up Monday, June 15th. January 15th, that's next Monday, not this Monday, but next Monday. And it is an opportunity to practice the presence, to get our bloated nothingness out of the way, all the ways in which we think it's going to work, and how we're going to make it happen, and what we want to have happen. It's a way of letting that kind of rest gently on the sides so that we can feel the impress of love, life for life, that giving of spirit into the unique form that we are, the unique expression that we are, in the way that it wants to show up as us. So these are methods that we specifically apply to help us practice the presence. And in practicing the presence, we are embodying the principles of oneness, love, and what creation actually is, and what is going on. I don't have time to do the rest of it. This is why you have to be in classes. Do you see? This is why our education program is so important. And you go and you go and you go. At some point, really truthfully, honest to God, it doesn't matter what the name of the class is. Just take a class. because you will be confronted with the deepening embodying of one of all of these things that we're talking about, and to really be able to practice it at a deeper and deeper and deeper and more embodied level. So some of this we'll see next week. I have to decide how I'm going to do that, but we are not, there it is. How it works, we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about the threefold nature, the creative process, and the spiritual laws. Because we don't have time. We'd be here for another 20 minutes, no matter how fast I talk. Whew. Where to begin? Where to begin? The second, I think one of the second most significant practice we have is the practice of sacred study. Because we must begin to grapple with what we believe about life. And that is the system and set of principles that have been laid down in our consciousness, or that we have either taken by osmosis or deliberately invested time in learning. So sacred study is the practice of expanding our knowledge and understanding the nature of the one infinite reality, who we are, and a deeper understanding of the use of each one of these science of mind, science of consciousness principles. And you can see that top picture is one of our classes celebrating at the end. The bottom picture is of a Wednesday night meditation. Sacred study deepens our awareness of spiritual truths and provides the framework of spiritual practice through Through spiritual study, we gain wisdom, we hope, as well as a deep appreciation for the wisdom of those who have walked a spiritual path throughout the ages. Right? Because we do recognize that there are so many people who have been on this path before us, thank God, that we can also lean into, tap into, be inspired by. So sacred study is the reason why we have such a huge commitment to our education. So the methods of sacred study are contemplation, which we get from the Jesuits. Ernest Holmes in The Science of Mind, every time he says, go meditate on this, what he's really describing is a contemplative process. Through reading and discussion, through courses, the experiences that we have here, like the Sacred Healing Experience, our immersions and retreats, they are all designed for us to sacred study, not just intellectual studying, but the studying at every level that allows us to embody it. I love you. I hope you come back next week.